All right. All right, so we'll go ahead and get going. So tonight we're talking about the good old legal stuff. There we go. Talk about these fun terms. Most of this you should already know from your Wilford class and some of the other stuff, but we'll just recap that and capture that for everybody who can't be here tonight. I'll explain how volunteer protection can help you, but at the same time, you need to make sure you're staying in the limits. Talk about what HIPAA and why that is incredibly important. And talk about preserving evidence and all that fun stuff. Because ultimately, as much as we would like to think otherwise, search and rescue is a missing person or is uh, a missing person case for from the law enforcement standpoint until it's been ruled out otherwise. So that's where all that overlap happens. Um, it's deemed criminal with very few exceptions. Um, from a medical standpoint, do no more harm philosophy. Um, just as it kind of says, you want to do things to help your patient, not worse it. We were talking about earlier about me breaking my leg because I decided that jumping out of the C-130 was a great idea as an Air Force guy. Um, I had a Navy Special Forces corpsman. Hey man, you know what I got to do? I'm like, no, I just need to sit here. I had a lower tib fib break. He decided to put me in what's known as a traction splint. You're only supposed to
Mm.
use that for femur breaks. If you have anything in the knee or lower, it will cause more harm. So I had a break turn into very substantial damage because this guy, against my will, threw me into a traction splint while I'm trying to fight him over, and he's got like Army Ranger candidates holding me down, and I'm like, dude, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be doing this. And then finally, somebody realized what he was doing and came running over and took care of the situation. But by that point, my yeah, I didn't get to go back to jump school because my leg was never the same.
Jeez.
So moral of the story with that is don't if you don't need to do something, don't do it. Um, if you are not trained to be a field surgeon, then you shouldn't be taking out your rusty Boy Scout pocket knife like right at a rally on MASH and doing a emergency crike in somebody's throat because I saw this on I'm serious. It happens. And people are like, I saw this.
It
I know what
does.
we need to do. It's like, no, I saw this on
I saw this
Chicago
on,
Fire. No,
yeah,
no, no, right? It just
no.
stay, don't do more harm. Sometimes the best action is just to sit in place and wait till bigger guns get in place. But acting in good faith will keep you out of legal problems. Um, just be mindful. Don't go above and beyond anything that you're not trained to do. Um, you know, I searched this property, which we'll talk about trespassing here in a bit. But I searched this property, okay, but you didn't have permission and the sheriff wasn't with you. Why did you go? Well, it was in our search area. Like, no, like if you didn't hear somebody screaming for help, or you didn't see somebody hanging from a tree, or you didn't see smoking wreckage of an airplane, right? You don't. That's when people get into trouble, and I'll show some
Yep.
examples of this in a bit as well. Um, Familiar exercise with applicable local and state laws and regulation, um, and of course, seek counsel as you need to. That gets very much interesting in different places. We were talking about spontaneous volunteers last week, which is, Bob
Good.
shows up to the search and I'm here to help. And I was like, okay, you see that a lot up in Montana, and I'm sure in your neck of the woods you see that as well. And it just breaks my
Yes.
heart.
Self-deploying. Self-deployment. Yep.
Self-deployment, all of that kind of stuff, and these spontaneous volunteers. But in some places, such as North Carolina, we saw this in the hurricanes,
Yep.
California with the wildfires and stuff, they will nip that in the butt. They will arrest you on the spot without a care. Well, I'm here helping. Don't care. You are
Yeah.
here.
That's
You are
good.
not certified. You're not supposed to be here. Go away. Either go away right now or we're going to arrest you. And they will arrest people and they will push more. Um, I'll show some examples here when we get to the end, but there were a lot of cases in North Carolina. You might have been monitoring a little bit more, but for other people watching this later, there were a lot of people who were self-deploying to North Carolina, or people were saying, "I need a cadaver dog here now," and we're like, "Who are you with? This is not how we deploy." And they were just
No.
losing their minds because we're like, "No, we don't do this. Any professional search and rescue canine handler or team is not going to play. We're more than happy to offer services. We are more. I was more than ready. I was going through my Air Force channels and was trying to get a deployment from the Air Force because some of the Air Force bases were involved out there. And so my chain of command was like, "Hey, we got a resource." Never came anything of it, but I was trying to work through the system. But the big thing with that is, especially with self-deploying and all that stuff, it is one thing to advertise capabilities and inform of resources available. It's another thing to just show up,
Mm-hmm.
which was really hard a couple weeks ago. I don't think you were in the chat. We were listening to an actual search that was happening 20 minutes from here, and we offered canine resources, and it would have been a beautiful. It would have taken us 20 minutes. We had a trailing dog and area dogs already. It would have taken us 20 minutes. We would have had this in the bag, especially where we eventually found the individual. Instead, in the snow and rain, sleet that was coming down for 6 hours, they proceed to work this case. And by the time they found him, they were trying to request Border Patrol to bring their helicopter in. They were bringing in all these extra resources. And within 5 minutes of us hearing about the case, we had told the officer on scene, "Hey, we have certified dogs that can take care of this." But they didn't want us. And it was just heartbreaking to hear this. We're like, dude, this isn't easy. We had a last on location. It was farm fields. We had a nice breeze. This would have been 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But we got to play by their rules. As much as we hate that. Uh, Legal fundamentals, scope of practice. We're going to talk about this more in the next slide. Scope of practice, standard of care, duty to act, endanger reliance, negligence, abandonment, consent, and good old documentation. Um, Scope of practice is what you are able to do based on your training, right? And so we see this a lot of, oh, I have a German Shepherd. I can bring him out and help. Is it certified? No, but we can help. And he finds dead things. No, no, that's outside of your scope. Are you trained to be a ground searcher? Well, no, but everyone should be out here looking. It's not how this
Mm-hmm.
works. Or more importantly, like the medical situation of, hey, I'm going to start doing field surgery in the field when I am not trained to that, and that is way outside of my abilities. Like, hold on, let's stomp the brakes here, right?
Yeah.
When you do that, that's when you start to get into trouble. And that's when SAR teams start to get into trouble, when they start acting outside of the law or they start thinking that they're um, out of that.
Are they just
Standard,
not staying in their capability
yeah,
range?
yeah. Um, doesn't mean they can't do a lot. Doesn't mean there aren't things to be done. It just means let's do it in a way, especially from a medical standpoint. Like, oh, I'm an EMT. So an issue, as a Civil Air Patrol member, I'm an EMT, longtime EMT. I'm an EMT instructor. Fine. Technically, if I'm working as a Civil Air Patrol searcher and I find a person, I can't start administering oxygen and drugs and things to him, technically, because that is because we do not have a medical director. We are not listed as medical providers. I am identified that I have knowledge. I can take his blood pressure. I can do, I can splint. I can do a whole lot of things. But technically, if I'm like, hey, I have an EpiPen, you're having an allergic reaction, right? That's going to become a whole judgment gray area thing. I'm taking a whole lot of liability of like, normally as an EMT, I can just give you an EpiPen if I have one issued to me. That's not yours because you don't have yours or whatever, but that's a whole lot of liability. And technically,
Hmm.
people can come back and be like, well, you're going to get in trouble for this, or we're going to go after your certification because you weren't supposed to do that because your organization does not have that standard of care. You can't
Yeah.
provide that. That's when people get into troubles. But the short answer with this, by the way, is defined as um, providing care to an individual from a medical standpoint, providing care as another individual would have with a similar training and similar concept. Duty to act. Okay. Individual's responsibility to provide care or services, depending on where you are in the nation, particularly on the East Coast. Um, you see probably seen a whole bunch of people between search and rescue and law enforcement and firefighters putting a whole bunch of stickers and firefighter plates or law enforcement plates or professional that this and that and whatnot on their vehicle. In certain states, including I believe Virginia is one of them, if let's say I drive my truck to Virginia for some conference or something, and I drive by a car accident and nobody's there yet, and somebody sees my firefighter professional firefighter plates from Montana. In that state, technically, if they catch my license plate, they can sue me for having a duty to act because I'm self-identifying what I am.
Mm.
And so we tell people like, "Hey, I like those stickers too. I like all that swag too. Be careful when you wear that though, because depending on where you are in the world, in some places they'll view that as you have a duty to act. Well, I have no med gear. Doesn't matter. Did you stop? Did you offer? Did you offer comfort? Did you offer advice? Did you right? It didn't mean that, oh, hey, we expect you to do field surgery right now. But you know, if you're driving a vehicle that says you're a mobile surgical unit and you're driving past a car accident and nobody's there yet, hey doc, why didn't you stop? Right?
Hmm.
And so there are places that becomes a bigger thing. In the Western states, it traditionally isn't so much, but just be aware that that is a thing, and that's kind of where you see it. You will also see it in a sense of let's say a team member rolls their ankle really bad and it might be broken. Okay. And you're like, hey, that sucks. Peace out. We're gonna keep going. And you're the highest ranking medical person. Well, you had a duty to act to provide some basic care to one of your team members. Now, of course, a team member is a little different than a subject than somebody you stumbled across on the field. But at the end of the day, from a medical standpoint, it's like, hey, you had a duty to at least address the issue.
Hmm.
Regardless if it's like, hey, we're going to stabilize and other people are going to come and pick you up. Um, that's between you and the organization and the command post. But that's where that duty to act comes into play. Ah. uh, so this one,
Hmm.
I check out this because there is we'll just say a local search and rescue entity that I very much know that they identify themselves as swiftwater technicians, ice rescue technicians, rope rescue technicians, all of this fancy dancy capabilities. But in the last 6 years that I've been here and I've been watching them, they will train on ropes once every 3 years is their average. And that's usually to get certified, and then they won't touch it again. Or maybe they might do knots one night, but they won't really get into the weedies with things. Um, and then they identify themselves to the public. Oh, we have this capability. No, you really don't. They've even identified before that, oh, we have a dive rescue ability. No, you don't. You have a diver who refuses to train with anybody else. That's not a dive team. That's not a dive capability. That's a lone diver. And so if people were like, wait a minute, they have a big search out here. If that family members kind of come back and go, wait a minute, you guys were saying on the news 6 months ago, and we have it recorded, and you were identifying that you had ability A, B, and C, but then you didn't use it. Well, wait a minute. Now we can come after you. And so that's what this is talking about is being very clear and updating your mission statements and your capabilities often just to make it very clear of what you're doing. Central Montana Canine. Hey, we are a search team focused around canine resources. We would like to have additional support elements. I would like to have a couple people with boats, but the whole idea is not that we're a boat rescue team, is we have boats supporting the dogs. Everything focuses back on the dogs. I would love, just because I'm a scuba diver and been wanting to go public safety diver all my life, I would love to have a small public safety diving capability. However, I'm not identifying us as a primary dive team. It's more of a, hey, if the dogs are hitting something on the water, we can get a diver to do a hasty search. We have a minimum capability, and you're identifying that. You're making it very clear that the whole point that we have divers is to work and train with the dogs.
Mhm.
And that's just how we're doing things. And we also, the other thing too is we're identifying ourselves as we're an augmentee force. We're not coming in to go take over your search. We're just here to, you need some bodies and you need some specialty resources for canine. We will come in here in spades, and we're here specifically with that, with individuals who are trained, who aren't a liability to you, and they know what they're doing, and the dogs are certified by somebody other than us. But that's how we identify ourselves. Uh, Negligence, failure to provide the same care as somebody with similar training in a similar situation. Um, Gross negligence, failure to exercise reasonable care in the same. So if you know how to do stop the bleed and apply pressure to a wound, even if you're like, oh man, this is kind of pointless, you're still expected. It can be put to negligence. Well, he was going to die anyway, so why am I going to do anything? No, we're going to keep fighting the good fight until we can't. Now, there will be times, and I would say there will be negligence on the other side. Um, Again, and I heard rumors of another local search and rescue team got called out into the mountains nearby in the middle of a blizzard because the ambulance couldn't get up there, and so they needed to snowmobile in there. Well, at the time they found the individual having a medical emergency, he was dead in the snow, and he wasn't like warm and dead. He was like ice cube, rigor mortis. He's been dead for 4 hours by this point, kind of
Mhm.
situation. Like clearly, there's nothing. A very very advanced stages was what is explained to me, but nevertheless, the team decided to work him. And I'm like, okay, I mean, end of the day, when in doubt, sure, go work a patient. But there will be times potentially that you run across an individual that, okay, this is not freshly dead. This is multi-hour, um, where you can go, okay, guys, another prudent person would say, let's just call the coroner on this one. But that's going to end up being ultimately your protocols and what your team does, all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you can be potentially open yourself to neglect or negligence. Sorry.
So I have a question about that.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
previous slide though about making sure that yep, making
Mm-hmm.
sure that your mission statement is clear and that your group's capabilities are accurate. So I see this a lot with dogs. Okay. People say they have canine teams or whatever. I see this a lot, even here. And it's so what do you think about like the liabilities and kind of the legalities of it when you deploy a dog and your dog's not trained or not certified and is not searching the area properly?
That's this. That's this. That's technically negligence, right?
Okay.
You know you're deploying a resource that shouldn't be deployed,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
And I would say 99% of the time, there's always that one off or that weird exception or a canine that, I heard a story, like during COVID, stuff got canceled and right not. So you have a dog that has been certified continuously for the last 9 years, and because of COVID, things got canceled and their
They're
certification
not.
lapsed.
Mhm.
Right, right. It lapsed 2 days ago. All right, that's going to be a judgment call, but technically, you're right. You're opening yourself to liability depending on what's going on, and especially if you're dealing with a situation that is potentially criminal in nature, right? The individual was kidnapped, somebody was murdered, that kind of thing. That's a whole big can of
Wow.
worms. And so something that didn't occur to my brain because I'm so used to being out here in central Montana where there's so much of nothing. And so the fact that my dogs hit on live find in HRD, the mentality that I had was one way or another that we were going to find you, right? That was where I was coming from. I'm here to go recover. Um, in the larger cities, it's becoming much, much, much more popular to get away from dual purpose canines,
Mhm.
because they want, if they're doing HRD, they're doing a lot more law enforcement work. And so this is why. So let's say the local sheriff comes in and goes, hey, we know this kid murdered his girlfriend. We know it. We need you to check his car so we can be able to push a search warrant, just like a drug dog, but we're
Yep.
doing right.
Narcotics. Yep.
Correct, correct. Because Bane is also live fine trained, he cannot if they do not have a search warrant already. The reason being is a lawyer's going to come in and they're going to tear that up if they're smart. If they have two brain cells amongst them, they're going to go, well, the I understand that he's trained on HRD and he hits on HRD and blood and bone and all this down to the grams, but but Bane also hits on looks for live people, and there were live people in that car at some point. So how do we not know he's just not hitting on that residue? And so I have to be cognitively aware, and that came up during a canine seminar I attended last fall, and I'm like, huh. For some reason, all my years that hadn't really occurred to me, and I'm like, okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. And so,
Yeah.
even though our resources here are not using us like that, we got to be really careful. Like, oh, you already have a search warrant for that property? Cool, I can help you all day, right? Because we have justification to be there. Oh, you don't have justification to search that car? I'm like, I need a search warrant first. And then I could pinpoint and say, hey, go spray your stuff over on this side of the car. Hey, he's really interested in the truck and the lighting and stuff like that. If you're trying to find, um, you know, speed up your process of searching things. But that was something that kind of came up, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So that's starting to become more and more popular. Is using HRD as only HRD, but that seems to be more for the teams that work a lot more with the law enforcement in the sense they're using that in murder cases or that they
Gotcha.
don't already have with us. It's kind of interesting trying to push into the whole missing person task forces and those kind of things, but I feel that at this point they're calling us because they have a suspicion and they already have a search warrant, so we can still focus, we can still do what we're doing. It's just something to be mindful of. But you're absolutely right,
Gotcha.
and I've seen it before. Um, and I would say overall, don't do it 99.99% of the time. The book answer is to don't do it.
Yeah.
And I've seen it, and I've seen people deploy who aren't have any training, and it becomes an issue. And if they get hurt technically on a surge, right, and it goes back to that spontaneous volunteers where it's like, why? Well, they're a volunteer firefighter. I'm like, huh? Yeah, and I know what those volunteer firefighters have because I'm one of them, and I know that they don't have any training, right? They're just getting whatever training that they're teaching on a Tuesday night, and that's good for them. But a lot of these guys these days, they're not getting the certifications and they're not handling it compared to like a city department or some of these larger areas. And it's very
Yeah.
interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Talked about that. Abandonment, termination of care without adequate notice, the patient's consent, making any provisions to continue care. So let's say and this actually happened to me. I was trying to take photos. I was in photography school in Missoula, and I was trying to take photos of the bagpipers and stuff bar hopping on St. Patty's Day. And needless to say, one of the local one of my frequent flyer patients was inebriated, passed out in the middle of the sidewalk. And I'm like, crap. And I'm like, and some gal identified as a nurse and all this. I'm like, great, you just dragged us into this. And he had a and so now, okay, now because of talking all of that and figure out what's going on, okay, now I've identified myself by accident. Uh, you know, I've identified myself as a medical provider, and now I can't leave them. So I had to wait there until I think PD and EMS showed up, and I'm just like, sorry guys, was not trying to make you a call, and it's my crew, and they're all mad at me, and I'm like, I can't, right? Now, there are times, especially in wilderness settings, where you might have to, but it's not considered abandonment because one, the patient knows. But like, let's say you and your partner are somewhere, and again, we'll do the good old broken leg, broken ankle situation. Okay, they're there, and man, okay, they're really hurt. There's a bone sticking out. And you're like, crap. All right, you're trying the cell phone, no cell phone coverage. You're trying the radio, and you can't hit a repeater. You can't get a hold of anyone. You need to get up on top of a hill or something to get a signal out. That would be one of those times where, even though you're a care provider, you're also um, the only one that's physically fit enough to go get help. And the situation is not going to improve until you start getting people coming your way. So just understand, you temporarily go in for supplies. You temporarily, like, oh, I'm going to run in my truck because I have a med pack in there. Those kind of things. That is not abandonment. Try to get somebody else if like, oh, hey, Bob, that big red bag I got in the back, go grab it. Here's my keys. But if it came down to it, right, that is not abandonment. That's you getting supplies and returning. What they're looking at medical abandonment is you going, cool, peace out. Another good example that this happens a lot, especially in the bigger cities, is let's say I come in with a patient from a nursing home and there are four gurneys lined up going into the ambulance bay from the ER because they're just so packed. And it happens, and these EMTs and medics crews are just so slammed and so burnt out. They're like, all right, cool. Hey, Mr. Bob, we're going to put you in this wheelchair and leave you in the hallway. Somebody will get to you. And then Bob's actually having a real medical emergency, and then nobody's tracking him. And so, he's in the middle of the ER, he's possibly right outside of a trauma room, and he dies because the medical crew abandoned him without formally handing him off to somebody. So that's a really good common example of abandonment. All right. Consent, um, express and complied. Express, hey, I just rolled my ankle. I hurt. I can use the hand over here. That's express. Um, I take a tumble down the hill. My head hits a rock and now I'm unconscious. Well, most adults prefer not to be unconscious. So we're going to go with that. It's implied that I should go help you. It's implied that I expect you to help me because I am unconscious when I probably don't intend to be unconscious. There's probably a problem there. You probably want me to help. I probably want you to help me. Now, if that person becomes conscious and is what we refer to as alert and oriented, and he goes, "What? No, I'm just drunk. Leave me alone. Okay. You know where you're at? Okay. What time? Do you know what's going on? Okay. You're an adult. And if you have a team that has patient care reports, have them sign against medical advice. Um, there are times that will happen. So, um, but those are the two difference, express and implied. Going a little further into if they are under the age of 18, technically they don't get a choice because the modern society says with a head on, if they are underneath the age of 18, um, it is implied that a proper parental figures would want you to take care of their child. So if you run and stumble across a 16-year-old who was in a car crash and they're trying to fight you that not go into a hospital or whatever, okay, now you as let's say you're responding from a search or something, you stumbled upon this, right? You're not working as an ambulance crew, you're not working as that. Um, you can't restrain him because that's kidnapping and that goes down rabbit holes of other issues. But at the same time, you can relay that to people. And
Mm-hmm.
you can let when law enforcement go over, like, hey, this is Bob. He's 16. He was coming back from football practice. I saw him roll his truck. He's really fighting about going to the hospital. I mean, I saw it. It was really, really bad accident, sir. I really think he needs to go in. And then you're putting the pressure onto the law enforcement or into the ambulance crew at that point. Um, but those are the big things. But technically, if you come across somebody in the middle of the woods or whatever and they don't want to be messed with, well, okay, you can't do anything about it. Well, you personally can't do anything about it. That's when you call back to mission base and they get a deputy out there and okay, they can deal with it, but you tried.
Yeah.
Right. Documentation, as we like to say, if it's not documented, it never happened.
Yep.
But we search sectors A through E. Great example. I'll show the photos of this plane crash later on. I had are you familiar with what a Marine Corps Osprey is? The tilt
No,
rotor, the tilt rotor aircraft.
no.
Oh, okay. It's cool. It's so cool. I'm going to show you. Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay. So I was one of these. I'll pull my photos from the crash later, but I was first on scene of that as a young sergeant uh, Marine crew was TDY to Creech Air Force Base because they were going up on the range and they were doing some FAM. And per the lieutenant colonel who was flying the damn thing, he said he was hovering there about 50 feet above the ground and both engines just stopped. It's his words. So fireball, engines all over the place, all that. This is where the documentation gets into play. About 6 weeks later, I get a call into my assistant chief who was off that day and was super mad that he was not on that call. Hey, you were on this call. This JAG lawyer, this Marine Corps JAG lawyer, has got a bunch of questions. Okay. So I'm talking to him and he's like, why did you let our bird burn to the ground? He was trying to start like putting a whole bunch of stuff on the fire department, like trying to say, well, from here it looks like you guys were like neglect, you guys were in neglect and you guys did not do what you were supposed to do, and I don't understand why you let a $500 million aircraft or whatever they're worth burn up the pieces in the Nevada desert. And I'm like, sir, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the explosives started going off. We had to fall back. We regrouped. We got water. We went in again and we took it off. By the time we got there, it was fully engulfed. And he was like, wait, what? And I'm like, well, what do you have from the dispatcher notes? We were on scene for like 14 hours. And my dispatcher, the little airman that was at Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base, that's where the dispatch center was, an hour and a half away from us, and he had about 6 lines for the whole incident.
What the?
Yeah, for 14 hours of actively fighting fire, the emergency explosives on the windows and stuff were popping off. Us arguing and swearing at our chief because we thought there were people in there, but they had all gotten out, but we didn't know that. And so we're trying to break into this thing while the explosives were going on. He's like, no, 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 fall out. Let's regroup. None of this was in there.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, hold on, sir. And so I sent him my report, which he did not have. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is night and day. Thank you, Sergeant.
Yeah.
So again, if it's not there, I told him, like, you need to get the voice recorder. You need to, this is not what happened. And he had no idea.
That's what I'm dealing with right now. This 22-year-old's missing and I've been searching from the first night to the first weekend, and but the emergency manager is the one leading everything, and I show up, the family's calling me saying they need help. I show up to look at his maps and it's just all scribbled. Squares, scribbles, squares, scribbles, and he's saying we search all this. We search. I'm like, no, there's no
Yeah.
way.
What probability of detection? Oh, 100%. We had people on there.
And
Yeah,
get this,
that's not.
get this.
Hmm.
They all drove UTV and ATVs.
Yeah. So that other search I was talking about from a couple weeks ago that happened here, that's all they were doing. They were driving ATVs all over the place at night. And we're just
Yeah.
like shaking our heads like, oh my gosh, what are you, right? Your probability of detection for the rest of the class list who watch this later, probability of detection for a normal person, daylight hours with low, easy terrain, not a lot of vegetation. You're talking 10-15% at most,
Yeah.
maybe in the daytime. And then with a canine resources, it jumps up minimum to 80. And it's like, guys, why are you guys not using, well, we got drones. I'm like, yeah, but they can't smell water. They can't
Yeah.
fly when it's Yeah, it's all these things, and it just breaks your heart. But
But
yeah,
then nothing's been
document.
reported. Like
Mm-hmm.
I do all my search reports every time I go out with the dog,
Mm-hmm.
like even if it's a morning search, it's an afternoon search, I do my reports.
Correct.
And I didn't get any reports. Like there's no briefing, nothing's going on. Right now they're trying to search this weekend, but I
Yeah.
got no information.
Correct.
Just what I have, what
And
I
that's what I'm
reported.
trying to get with everybody else too. And we were talking a lot about that last week about the briefings and having an actual incident action plan that's written out, and we're actually gathering information, and somebody's actually sifting through it, and why that's all important. And obviously, that's a lot more than just here. That goes into the search management class.
Hmm?
Um, but it's very important to understand, like, no, there's better ways to do things. But you see those searches that are like, you get that lone deputy who isn't a part of the search team or anything like that. He was just a deputy in the area, and he got on call to, hey, there's report that Timmy is missing in the woods over here. Go to farmhouse 1234. Ah, shoot, he's actually missing. Oh, I gotta call these people. And he's just shooting from the hip until somebody else gets there who actually has an idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Yeah.
Documentation tips, just like you said, include the incident number if you got one. Time of entry, document all observation changes, measurements, GIS. Laws that affect SAR personnel, Good Samaritan law. Um, that works. Well, we'll talk about that in the next slide. Volunteer Protection Act of 97. That's a real big one that helps us. And good old HIPAA. So, Good Samaritan law. This, you got to be careful though, because this does slightly change from state to state. There are Good Samaritan laws. So, here's where it was officially intended for. You're coming back from a search, just like we talked about. You've run into that. You see the 16-year-old that crashed his car, right? You stop, you help, you have a baby first aid kit for your canine, and you're like, I got nothing here, bud. Sorry. But you stay with him and you help him, right? And it turns out that he paralyzed himself, but for whatever reason, because his parents are lawyers or whatever, oh, it's your fault that he's paralyzed. No, it's not. But okay. That's when the Good Samaritan law comes into play, because the lawyers and everybody, when he gets to the court, is going to go, no. What? Okay, what did she do? Well, she kept him in the car. Uh huh. Well, she didn't do anything. She stayed with him, right? Yeah. Was she checking vitals? Yeah. Was she an EMT on duty? Did she have a whole bunch of? Well, no. Okay. You are
Yep.
working out of the goodness of your heart to help a situation, to help a bad situation, right? Or let's say same scenario, but oh, the car was on fire, so you drag him out, and you're trying to now say that, oh, he's paralyzed because you dragged him. Well, the damn thing was on fire, right?
Yep.
Again, you were trying to do, in my mind, I don't want to be in a burning car, so I dragged him out of there. And so the fact that he's now paralyzed, hey, sorry, bud, but I was trying to save your life. Where it starts to get murky, right, is some SAR teams will think that this will cover them in all situations. So let's say you come in and um, let's say um, let's say your team activates for a search, and you come across a patient, and this goes back to those other terms that we were just talking about neglect and scope of practice and stuff. And they're like, oh, I'm a nurse practitioner and all of this, and I'm going to start doing things in the field. We found our subject, and he's alive, and I'm going to be helping him. And something happens. The family starts suing the team for whatever reason. Um, and the team comes around and goes, oh, but we have the Good Samaritan law. Because you guys are going out as an organized, trained entity, this no longer covers you. You're advertising yourself as a rescue ability. And then that goes back to, well, what's your capabilities? Oh, we're just a
Hmm.
search entity and we don't provide medical care. Okay, then why were you providing medical care beyond basic first aid? About
Hmm.
beyond what somebody in you know a non-provider can provide, right? And that's what's going to get people into trouble. And so it's important to know that the Good Samaritan law can help people, and if you have a legitimate, again, like you said, you roll up on the high school kid that was in a car accident, that's when this helps you. But when you go out as an organized search team with uniforms and the whole nine, just like volunteer firefighters aren't covered by this, right? They're recognizing themselves as the local rescue entity. So they are required to abide by different laws and to have certain standards. So just be mindful of that when you start playing with, quite frankly, the big boys, and you're coming out and you're like, hey, I'm here to provide, and I got patches and I got certifications. My dog has certifications. You're now playing with the big boys and girls, and you are expected to abide by those standards. And so this will not help you right off, but the next one will. But oh, hold on. Next, we're done it. Good sparing law, like we said, and then the next one, Volunteer Protection Act, which came out in '97 and got updated. That one will help you. But that one is specifically made for volunteers and these kind of things. Um, don't require emergency declaration. But again, acts of ordinary negligence committed within the scope of volunteers' responsibilities. You're not you're not regularly trained to be a Black Hawk pilot. Don't be like, I'm going to commandeer this Black Hawk for my search and rescue team, and we're going to go fly it or try to, right? Like, no, no, that's not how this works. You can't do that. And again, just because you might be working along with law enforcement does not make you law enforcement in most cases. Yes, there are a number of search and rescue teams that are directly part of the sheriff department, and they are viewed as reserve officers and they do additional duties. But those individuals as reserve officers, like San Diego County Sheriff Department Search and Rescue, know a couple individuals with them. They are required to do not just the SAR time in training, but they have to do X many hours actually in a patrol car with an officer every year. But they get to carry a pistol, they get to do certain things. They have some law enforcement abilities, but that's beyond the normal, if that makes sense. But as
Hmm.
us as the independent search and rescue teams in the small towns, we don't have that ability. So just be mindful of that. Good old HIPAA. Um, where was that? I will. Da, da, da. Here, let me pull up Book of Faces. So, a dear friend of mine, so a SAR team on the West Coast. The problem having friends that post just as many things as you do is it becomes really hard to find her original post. Um, there was a search probably about a month ago on the West Coast, and they they found a Alzheimer individual that had wandered off, and it was a canine find. Awesome. The downside is it showed a picture of the missing individual. It showed they announced the entire first and last name of the individual that was missing.
Oh my God.
It had the first last name. It had like all their information. It said what Alzheimer assisted living center that they're from. It like had like all of their personal information blasted on the interwebs. And my friend was kind of pointing out like this doesn't seem great.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like this is insane, and this is a large. It was a large sheriff department. Let's do two more clicks, and I'll give up.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm not.
I just I kind of encountered something like that too. This autistic boy went missing and um I didn't get there till that morning, but he went missing in the evening and they searched all night for him. Well, they found him like 9 o'clock the next morning and it was just a community person. And the first thing they did was take a picture of this little boy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by the time I left, I got there at 9. They just found him at 8. And by 10 o'clock, I was on my way back and he was already on Facebook. I was so upset. And so when I do presentations, I talk about that story.
Yep.
Don't ever take a
Nope.
picture of the subject and post it.
Yep. The closest I have ever gotten. I'll take photos of me on top of a mountainside with no, you know, whatever. Hey, we're taking a break or whatever. But there's nothing of the individual. There's nothing of what we're doing. There's nothing of our search area. There's nothing of
Yep.
if it's not a PIO release thing. And all right, I'm not finding it because it's just buried. But yeah, it was this large sheriff department, and the SAR team reposted it. And their argument was why the because she knew a number of members on that team and was like, "Hey guys, this is not. I'm kind of questioning this." And the response back was, "Well, the sheriff had jurisdiction, and they're the ones that released information." Budget through that it. It was like, yeah,
Oh
but
my
that doesn't make
gosh.
it right in the first place.
No.
And we actually run into the similar issue in the fire department on base because we'll get a call to like the dorms. Some 19, 20-year-old airman has a medical emergency, and they'll call back to my fire dispatcher and they're like, "Oh, who is it?" And you go, "Can't tell you. I can tell you it was a 20-year-old male who sounds like might have a appendicitis going on." Oh, okay. Command post hangs up the phone, calls BDOC, which is literally the next desk to my dispatchers, which is base defense operation. That's the cops. For some reason that I do not understand why, they somehow do not have to follow the same HIPAA rules. So the command post calls the cops and then gets all the information. Oh yeah, it's Airman Smith. He's part of the 341 Security Forces Squadron, and da 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 da. This and this and this, and his favorite color is blue. And it's like, okay. But I yell at my dispatchers. I yell at my fire dispatcher. I'm like, tell them to pound sand. Tell them you are not allowed to give that information, and if there are reasons that that information needs to get released, it will be done in a very controlled fashion. I had a case where we had a self-inflicted thing happen, and I had already turned in our medical reports to the clinic, and Air Force OSI, which is the equivalent of NCIS before the Air Force, if that makes sense. Have you ever watched NCIS? And so they're the Air Force version. And they were investigating it, and they're like, "Hey, I need to see your records and stuff." I'm like, "Cool, you need to talk to these guys at the clinic." And then people were yelling at me, "Well, it's OSI," and I'm like, I have now passed that power to the clinic. The clinic has ultimate responsibility. I wasn't saying no, I wouldn't help them. I just need to keep them in the loop
Yeah.
with that stuff. I know you already know what's going on. But yeah, so just be careful with that. It's one thing.
Trespassing.
Hey, we're looking for Timmy. 4-year-old boy, and all that fun stuff. Trespassing, like I mentioned before, um, you cannot trespass knowingly or even unknowingly onto somebody's property without permission. Um, the you can sometimes get workarounds if you have law enforcement with you, because then it's on them, and then they can take out the heat. But the reality is, you're going to talk to, hey, we need to search your property because we're looking for Timmy. We think he might have wandered onto one of your fields. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to say no. And then the only times that you can knowingly cross onto that property is if you do know there's um, 100% life threat. You see the body 10 feet over his property, right? The dog's leading you, and you look up and you see the body in the bushes 10 feet away from you. Um, you hear somebody screaming for help. You can see smoke from a potential plane crash, and you're looking for a plane, right? It's got to be very, very specific. And once you've figured out what is going on in the scene, technically you're supposed to back off. Once you dealt with any life threats, if you go in and let's say it's a plane crash, and oh, the lone pilot didn't make it, and he's missing a head, so we know he didn't make it, and we're not going to try anything. Okay, cool. We're gonna back off to the other side of the property line, and by then, other people should be arriving. Um, but just be very careful with that, especially in the Dakotas and Montanas and stuff. It is real easy to throw a stone and accidentally get on somebody's property, and Onyx or something like that is not showing the right boundary lines, and
Yeah.
just be very respectful when possible. Try to talk to people ahead of time and all that fun stuff, because we want to go up there with our HRD dogs to go um, look for Aiden, but we didn't want to go up there unescorted because I could see so many houses and stuff, and I'm like, my maps aren't even showing where property lines are. I don't want to go up. If I'm with you guys, that's one thing, but I didn't want to go up there alone. I want to at least one escort the first time I'm up there, so people like, oh, what are you guys up here? Oh, okay, now we know what you're doing, and you're not doing any fishing and trying to be
Not creeping around or
correct, and
yeah,
they're like, oh,
being a
you're
weirdo and
legit, you're
stuff.
working with our people, and trying to be as respectful as possible. And that's going into trespassing more, right? And it happens. We see it. I've seen it in CAP too, where people are like, oh, this is a trick. The stress beacon's on this property, so I'm just gonna go. No. A good show. Um, Netflix just posted a documentary about a month ago about this treasure treasure hunt that actually developed like 2 dozen search and rescue cases, and 6 people died. This dude that buried like $1 million in the woods, and he just gave a bunch of clues, and everyone just kept going over that. That's a good example for this, for both search management, because there was a whole lot of controversy on it, and then of course the trespassing, because people were like, oh no, he wants me to go look at the no we people were
Yeah,
trespassing and doing things like that, and it's like, oh god, this is causing issues. And like I said, right here, that's the only time, if you see a person actively in distress, it's the only time that you can cross over legally, and you're gonna be okay. If you accidentally go cross over, because you're focusing on the dog, and one of your flankers goes, hey, wait a minute.
yeah.
Whoa.
Hold on.
And then back out and call a command post and be like, hey, the dog's leading me in this property. We just realized we stepped over the property. We stepped off. We need permission to
Yeah.
continue. Um, this is site procedures. I don't know why that photo's cutting off like that, but the whole scene is a crime scene. We want to secure the area, but again, we are not law enforcement in most cases, right? For exceptions of the very few exceptions of certain teams, we are not law enforcement. And so, if you have a plane crash, you can tell somebody, or you can tell Farmer John, and hey, this plane crashed on his property, and comes out to investigate. And they're like, hey, sir, we need you to kind of don't get any closer because we don't want to contaminate the scene. There's no survivors. I'll screw that. It's my property. Okay. You just document it. Document that he went through, and if he did anything, because from a law enforcement standpoint, like, hey, I can't control you, but I'm telling you
Yeah.
right now, other people are going to have an issue if you go up there, and you're going to mess things
Yeah.
up. And that's the same thing for
Family members.
family members,
That's
human
a big one.
remains. Correct.
Yeah.
Document. Just like you said, when we found those bones, couple more of the remains. I had photos, I had GPS hits, I had a complete log. I described the bones in detail and said, hey, per my EMT training and all of this stuff, like this is matching. I would say this is very suspicious to be a human bone. My dog is indicating on the bone, and I'm agreeing that it does appear to be a bone, but an anthropologist or mortician needs to, or a coroner needs to completely verify. But I am leaning to this is something of interest that should be collected. Um, and like I said, preserve the scene as much as possible. Uh, good. One exception for this, something that I did not know as a teenager. I was 18 and was searching for a downed plane in the Napa River, and we were searching the top of the San Francisco Bay Area on this old Navy base, and we come across a whole bunch of bones that were getting washed up on the water. And we're like, well, that's obviously not our person, but this looks really suspicious. And while we were there, we had called local PD because it was so suspicious. We called PD. At the same time, this is 2003 2004 thing. So oh, what's his name? Was it Nancy Peterson, the pregnant lady that got dumped by her husband in the San Francisco Bay Area around that time frame?
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was like we could see basically where her body showed up, like across the bay, like in eyesight. That's how close we were. So we're like, oh, this might be something. Something that we didn't do was push the bones further up on shore because a boat came by and it pushed some of the bones back in the water. And we're like,
Oh, shoot.
because we weren't trying to mess with it, but in hindsight,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, maybe we should have secured that a little better.
Yeah.
But I was 18, and the other guy on the search team with me was 16, and that didn't occur to us until it happened. We're like, oops. But yeah, that turned out to be an old murder victim that got dumped on the Navy base years and years and years ago, and then never found her body. We finally found something of her by accident. But that's a good one for securing the scene and preserving the scene and doing all that and documenting and everything and all that good stuff. General suggestions. Yeah, don't live your life in a sense of everything you're going to do is you're going to get sued. Um, do know and perform your job to the best of your abilities. Always act in good faith. Um, as I try to tell people, if you just try to be a decent human being, it's kind of weird. You end up being a decent human being and people tend to like you better. It's weird. Um, that usually keeps you out of trouble for the most part. Of course, be familiar with any of the local state agreements. One that got brought up last week was about firearms in search and rescue.
Mm.
Um, and I pulled up the law in the state of Montana about 2 years ago. They actually passed a law saying that it is at the discretion to the authority having jurisdiction in that area,
Okay.
aka volunteer SAR members in the state of Montana can carry firearms on their body for protection against wildlife. And that is
Mm.
specifically what it's written into. It's not for law enforcement enforcing or anything like that. However, I
Okay.
would tell you, for the exception of Alaska, um, it is if you were to hear that same law in places like Nevada and a few other places, that is a very taboo thing. Unless you are working as your SAR team isn't just working with the sheriff department, it is part of the sheriff department, and you've been already cleared for that is considered a very taboo thing. So just be mindful of when crossing over states and whatnot. Just be mindful of what is going on locally. No one's
Okay.
ever going to tell you no about bear spray, firearms. I just take that with a grain of salt. And
Okay.
like I said, there's as you have probably have already seen in the world of canine SAR or whatnot, there are some really big egos at times. And I've noticed just being in and around the military for 20 years, of whenever you get people with egos and things that can go boom, that's just never a good match. So that's why I'm like, okay. So just be mindful of that, but that is a thing in some places. And of course, treat all SAR or all information to a SAR incident as confidential. If anybody asks you questions about it while the thing is still going on, refer to a public information officer. If you are teaching somebody later on and doing reference to like what I did or some of the cases I have done for teaching purposes, you always keep it very vague. You're not. I'm not giving full names, socials, and all that. I'm just saying 50-something-year-old ex dentist or dentist, and this is what happened, and right, you're keeping things very vague for the most part, unless you're showing articles. Because again, you want to keep that confidential. You want to be very respectful. And as I was telling everybody else, my goal for all of this is to get everybody to be the to a professional level that all of a sudden everybody's calling us because they're like, oh wow, you guys actually know what you're doing. Oh wow, you guys like you're this isn't just like some of our volunteer fire departments. I'll bash on fellow volunteer fire departments that I walk into, even mine locally. I'll walk in and some of the training and stuff that they do, and I just shake my head and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I did this at work, I would get fired. So we're trying to get away from that. Um, Seek professional advice when questions arise. Keep training and certifications current whenever possible. Weird things happen, such as pandemics. NASAR actually gave free extensions to people during the pandemic. So
Mm,
I got an extra 6 months on Bailey because she expired right in the middle of the pandemic, and he's like, "Yeah, you got 6 months free. Just consider yourself good." Okay.
nice.
um, Never exceed your training. Document everything. At least as a team, you're documenting everything. And yeah, become familiar with the procedures locally. If you're not supposed to auto deploy, then don't auto deploy. That being said, like I said earlier, especially us being these independent entities, we might not be the authority having the restriction, but it does not mean we can't self advertise. Absolutely no reason why we can't call dispatch and be like, hey, we hear you guys got a big search here. You want a couple extra dogs? This is what I got available right now. Oh, okay, I'll pass it on to the deputy. I'm like, you know, throw some fishing lines. Maybe somebody might take a bite. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But
Yeah.
be like, hey, we're around, we're certified, and this is what we can do. And oh, didn't think about you. And that's how you start getting. Besides doing preemping and pre gaming, by going to your nearby counties and stuff and making nice. And oh, you guys are having a meeting on the third Wednesday. Okay, cool. I'm bringing a couple boxes of donuts or cupcakes or something like that, and be like, hey, I just want to let you know about us, and here's our contact info. This is how you can get us, and more than happy for a train. More than happy to come out on real searches. This is our standards. Oh, hey, you have standards. Oh, you have real training. That's when they get to see that. So that when these things come up and they're like, oh, yeah, there's that one group. Yeah, go ahead and invite them too. This one looks like a big one. And then review, just talking about all that. Talked about all those lovely little fun things. Definition, excuse me. Any questions on any of this?
I know.
We killed about HIPAA. We talked about the Volunteer Protection Act, how that differs between that and Good Samaritan law. Um, Talked about trespassing as it deals with search and rescue. Talked about preserving evidence, keeping chain of custody, all that. And then want me to show, where did I put that? an interesting group to follow. Oh, so here's some cases. Uh, this is a big one that I was just watching a month ago. So this gal was walking with her dog, and this is not a good. Let's see if they got a better photo. So she was like way up here, and it was pouring down rain, and the dog went in the water somewhere up here, and then she was gone. And conditions were so bad, and this is south of Tacoma, right? So
Washington, uh-huh.
yeah, Washington. So Seattle, Tacoma's up this way, and she's like way up in the mountains in kind of a remote area. And the family and all that is losing their mind. And I'm watching all this happen on Facebook. And they are basically banding together and creating their own search party because the local searchers who are all in this area are some of the best um I mean really high speed search and rescue teams in the nation. They're all mountain rescue. You got PJs in the area. I mean they got some seriously very skilled, very much used resources up in the area. But they weren't
Yep.
going out because it was too dangerous. Because the water was flowing at such a high rate. They're like, we can't go out yet. But the family kept going out. And then you're seeing all this happening on Facebook, and people are like, and one person had and just absolutely insane some of the comments that were happening. Someone made a comment of, well, my dog alerted me to a medical emergency, so I think she would be great to go find her.
Oh my
What?
God.
And I'm posting on there. I'm like, ma'am, that's really bad. And there's a couple times I post, I'm like, that's not a really good idea. And somebody got on there like, no, I've been on plenty of searches. And what are you talking about? We need all hands on deck. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, whatever you are, Mr. Air Force EMT guy, like, this is not how the real world works. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, oh
And
my God.
and so you're seeing these
Oh
really
my
outlandish things,
gosh.
especially in the last, I want to say 18 to 24 months. It has gotten incredibly bad nationwide where you're seeing cases like this. There was a gentleman somewhere down here. He's a diver from California who volunteered and flew up with his diving gear and was diving in like whiteout waters somehow. I'm going to go search the river. And I'm like,
Oh my God.
you have some of the best public safety dive teams within 5 miles of this location. They're not going out for a reason. And you got this guy
Yep.
who's just, he identifies himself as, I'm a rescue diver, but he's working alone. He doesn't have a team. He doesn't have any resources. He has a GoFundMe account, though. That's always kind of handy. They went to the spa afterwards and they're posting things on that. And the same thing was happening in North Carolina, where all of
Yep.
these little canine crews were going out there and they were setting up GoFundMe's and all this. Like, what is going on? Which is, of course, what we do not want to be.
Yep.
Um, Here's another one that was recently happening.
Creek water.
This happened last year, and um, a searcher that was going to a search up at Hungry Horse, which is outside of Glacier, actually drove past the whole search area. Unknowingly, he drove right past this guy. While they were looking for this guy, motorcyclists, they stopped from a stop. They went up the road. They pulled off at some point, and his two buddies that was riding with him, they looked back, realized he wasn't back there, and then they couldn't find him. And he had run off the road. Our deer had ran out, hit him, and threw him into the river.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and he was found alive, but he was up in this really remote area along Idaho and Montana. And then you had all this political stuff going on because the Missoula County Sheriff Department, which was in charge up to the Montana line, was like, no, we have no proof that he was up here. We're not deploying. And then the Idaho side was like, we're a town of 503
Oh shoot.
or something crazy like that. I had just drove through here a couple weeks after this occurred onto a canine seminar. I mean, it's an hour and a half of no cell coverage, and all the families were getting all together and they were searching. And finally, one of his friends um, pulled off at a site that had been checked before, and they spotted him in a bush, and he was alive.
Oh my gosh.
But this is the main thing I was showing about this is the amount of chaos that has been happening with like these spontaneous searchers and these spontaneous
Yep.
searchers coming in, these untrained individuals. And we were seeing reports online that people were like riding on the back of pickup trucks, like SEAL Team
Yep.
6 kind of style, and going up and down the highway looking for him and hopping out. And it's like, oh my gosh. And the reality was that it didn't sound like any one agency was properly in charge. And this was kind of leading into a whole lot of gray area, and people were just making up their own rules. But
Yep.
between this, what happened in Washington, and what's been going on in North Carolina, I just want to bring up is like a whole lot of gray area for some of these search and rescues that have been going on. Where it's like, what are you people doing? Because 20 years ago, this would never have been remotely acceptable. But all of a sudden, in the last 18 months, I feel like this is going on almost quarterly. You're hearing
Yeah. Yep.
just excuse the expression, a shit show, being operated by people who don't know what they're doing and they're making things up and, they're like, oh, we're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, there's people who know how to do this and do this on the regular and can help. You just need to ask. But those are the things that you need to fix. Is there anything else you would like to go over tonight, madame?
I don't think so. I think I downloaded that the video from the chat and
Oh,
so
good.
um, and then I'll catch up with you guys.